Fateh. Hopefully everyone's got their blood running a little bit and your energy is up. I'm sure some of you got to sleep pretty late last night just getting settled in, but we're going to kick off now the rest of the retreat with our first workshop. Last year at the retreat, we spoke a lot about the 84 Galugaras, and we talked a little bit about Jaswant Singh Kaldra and the idea of challenging the darkness and trying to become that light that he so poetically spoke about. This year's retreat is focused on building a relationship with the Guru and understanding the transformational power that the Guru has. And when we think about challenging the darkness or building that light, Guru Angad Dev Ji has said, "Jeso chanda agava suraj chare hazar, ete chan mondya gurbin kor andar." There can be hundreds of moons and thousands of suns, but still without the Guru, there is only darkness. And so this weekend, we'd like to challenge ourselves to find that light, and in finding our Guru, really be able to provide the oil for that light. And we'll talk more about that, I think, as each subsequent workshop goes through. Hopefully we'll be able to build more and more on those concepts. So without more delay, we'd like to introduce to you Mohanpal Singh, and he will be speaking to us about the Sidh Gosht and the debate between Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the Sidhs. Paul Riji has been one of my closest friends for a very long time, but beyond being one of my closest friends, he is so dedicated to the Sikh community in many ways. He's a busy pathologist by trade, but spends a lot of his time working on projects for Sikh Gurmat camps and retreats and educating the community. Paul Riji's been one of these people that every time we have a retreat, we can come to and say, "Can you please do something?" And not only does he agree to do it, but he really puts his heart and soul into researching and bringing something of significant quality for all of us to learn from. So please enjoy this next workshop. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I do want to thank everyone for being here and allowing me the opportunity to share with you some lessons from Sidh Gosht. I did email the group a translation of Sidh Gosht last night, so that should be in your email. It's just for your reference. I would hope that you would look over it and hopefully gain something from it. So I want to give you a little bit of background about what Sidh Gosht is. So this is the name of a bani in Guru Granth Sahib. It was recited by Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, written in Rag Ramkali. It consists of 73 stanzas or bordis, and in the current Guru Granth Sahib, it's on pages 938 through 946. It'll take you about 15 to 20 minutes to read. It's a relatively short bani, and it's beautifully written, and hopefully we can get some of the essence out of that during this workshop. So just to go over a few definitions here, what does Sidh mean and what does Gosht mean? What does the name of the bani mean? So Sidh literally means one who is realized, accomplished, or perfected. And what it meant in practicality, the people who were referred to as Siddhs during the times of the Gurus as well as today, there were ascetics, or people who renounced society or the world. They utilized specific religious practices for the sake of obtaining certain spiritual powers, mystical powers, and ultimately mukti, which is liberation or immortality in a sense. Another word for them is yogi. We use that commonly today. So these were people who, they wouldn't get married. They would go out and live often in the wilderness or wander around. They lived away from society. They physically removed themselves from society because they felt that society was a temptation. It was being entrenched in Maya. So they felt that if they physically removed themselves from other people, that they would not be entrenched in Maya. And the word Gosht means literally discourse or dialogue. So when we say Sidh Gosht, the body is an actual dialogue with the Siddhs that Guru Nanak Sahib had. And it's written that way as well. The body is actually written as questions posed by the Siddhs, and then Guru Nanak Sahib's reply to those questions. A lot of the practices that the Siddhs would do to obtain these powers or this idea of mukti, they believed in a lot of physical discipline, mental disciplines, so they'd sit in certain postures. Certain postures would be conducive to increasing certain energy levels according to their beliefs, things like that. A lot of mantras and different kinds of practices that they would do to increase energy level and eliminate the ego from the mind. So again, Sidh Gosht means discourse with the Siddhs. So specifically in Sidh Gosht, Guru Nanak Sahib mentions the Nath Siddhs. They were a sect of Siddhs. Nath specifically literally means master or lord. And these people were the Nath Siddhs, again, they were celibate. They did not marry. They did not believe in having sexual intercourse, even because they didn't believe in marriage for the most part, and because they didn't work either. They had to beg for food, so they would actually go around to people in society, and they would beg for money or food in order to maintain their own sustenance. And Guru Nanak Sahib actually points out the hypocrisy in this later on. The Nath Siddhs often lived in groups, such as monasteries, where they were in one place, or they would travel around as groups. But they would never remain within the confines of society. They were predominantly in northern India, and today most Siddhs or yogis that remained in India are really from the Nath sect of Siddhs. They pioneered what is called Hatha Yoga or Hatha Yoga. The founder of this was named Gorakhnath, and he's revered as a god. They have 9 gods that they revere, and then 84 disciples who had achieved mukti by practicing Nath Yoga. And one of those 9 gods is Shiv. And Gorakhnath was believed to be a reincarnation of Shivaji. But he's also revered as one of the gods. So he pioneered Hatha Yoga, probably in the 8th century, although some sources say a little bit later. But what this was, it focused on breath control, especially breath control. That was really important. Different kinds of breathing exercises, that you stop the breath, start it again, things like that. Various types of postures, as well as specific hand postures that they would use. And again, these were all utilized in the hope that it would increase their energy, certain energy fields that they could tap into and achieve higher spiritual states. So this was their belief system. And ultimately, to achieve liberation from the cycle of birth and death. That was their goal. Important to mention, they did have a guru-disciple relationship. So not unlike we revere our guru, they had this relationship and they had lineages. So Gorakhnath was a guru of somebody else who learned from him and then themselves became a guru, etc., etc. And then those lineages would get passed down on through the Nath Siddh tradition. So I just want to mention here that when Guru Nanak Sahib, when he goes and talks to the Nath Siddhs and he talks about all of this, it's not it's not with ego in mind. He doesn't go there to say you're doing something wrong and I'm doing something right. He just speaks what he knows to be the truth. And so we'll see how that plays out. So the stories we hear about Guru Nanak Sahib talking to the Nath Siddhs, there are various stories. The main one that a lot of us have heard about is that he goes to the mountains. And we see this in the Janam Sakhis, that he goes to the Himalayas, specifically Mount Kailash, which is in the Himalayas. This was during the northward Udasi, which most people classify in the third Udasi that Guru Nanak Sahib took. And the other name for Mount Kailash is Sumer Parvat, or Mount Sumer, also called Mount Sumeru. So a lot of people refer to it as Mount Sumer or Mount Sumeru. And according to Hindu mythology, Sumer was the home of Shiva. So we see that tie-in. That's why these Nath Siddhs resided there, because they believed that that was the home of the god Shiva. And Gorakhnath was, again, the incarnation of Shiva who started Hatha Yoga in the Nath tradition. So, Guru Nanak Sahib and Bhai Mardana, just the two of them, go to the mountains. I'm sure you've heard some version of the story, and they encounter the Siddhs. This is taken from a more recent comic book that's been published in the last couple of years. Very nice artwork, but you can see here, it shows Guru Nanak Sahib and Bhai Mardana going into the mountains and encountering the Siddhs who are sitting and standing in their various positions, and quite amazing that the common folk, when they saw people doing these things, sitting in these positions, sitting for long periods of time, doing things that were considered superhuman. And so the Siddhs were actually quite intimidating to common folk. So I think that's an important point to remember, that people were pretty intimidated by them, so that when the Siddhs came begging for food, they gave it up quite readily. So Guru Nanak encounters the Siddhs in the Himalayas. Supposedly they lived in caves in the mountains, wore very little clothing for the most part, and ate very little food. And he engages them in this discourse, this discussion, where they ask him questions and he responds. Bhai Gurdas Ji gives this story some credence. In his first bhag, the 28th Body, he says, Baba Nanak visualized all the expansive 9 divisions of the earth. Then he climbed up to the Sumer mountain, where he came across a group of Siddhs, and the mind of the 84 Siddhs and Gorak filled with surprising doubts. So 84, where there's 84 achieved disciples after the 9 gods, he's basically saying that the Siddhs who were there, the philosophy of Gorak and the Nath Siddhs, the ones who were there, who believed in that philosophy, they were amazed at what Guru Nanak Sahib said. The other story that we hear where Guru Nanak encountered the Siddhs is much later in his life, actually quite towards the end of his life, where when he was living in Kartarpur, there was a festival held in honor of Shiva called Shivratra, and it was held in Achal Batala, and Guru Nanak Sahib went there and he encountered the Siddhs and he had a discussion with them there as well. There are other stories in other locations where Guru Nanak Sahib encountered Siddhs, and the reality of it is that probably Sidh Gosht is not just written based on one account. But again, Bhai Gurdas Ji talks about the encounter in Achal Batala, and he says, listening to this, the yogis started snarling loudly and invoked many spirits. They said, in Kal Yug, Nanak Dev has trampled and driven away the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. Saying thus, the Siddhs counted all sorts of medicines and started making tantric sounds of the mantras. Yogis changed themselves into the forms of lions, tigers, and performed many actions. Some of them became winged and flew like birds. Some started hissing like a cobra and poured out fire. This is all Bhai Gurdas Ji saying this. Bangarnath, who was the leader of the Siddhs, plucked the stars, and many upon deerskin started floating on water. The fire of the Siddhs was inextinguishable. So he's basically saying that these Siddhs used their powers to try to intimidate Guru Nanak Sahib. Whether or not they actually had powers is not the issue of debate here, but they believed they had powers, and society believed that they had these powers to do these things. But they really tried to intimidate Guru Nanak Sahib, and he wasn't at all intimidated by this. So I think this, just to make a point here, just to emphasize this, Guru Nanak Sahib embraced a huge challenge here by going out of his way to have this discussion with these Siddhs. People were intimidated by these Siddhs. They were considered wise, they were considered powerful. One just didn't go up to them and start challenging their beliefs or saying something contrary to them. That wasn't something that normal people did. So Guru Nanak Sahib, just to make a point, he had no fear. No fear of these people, no fear of what would happen to him. He came to speak the truth, and that's what he did. So, most likely, based on multiple encounters, Sidh Gosht was written very late in Guru Nanak Sahib's life. And he wrote it as a Bani, which summarized the various encounters he had with the Siddhs. But the two main encounters were the ones that I've talked about here. That Bhai Gurdas Ji references both of those in his Bani. So, this is how Sidh Gosht starts. And I just want to make the point again, this was not a competitive dialogue. It wasn't that Guru Nanak Sahib is trying to put them down. He's not doing this through ego. He's not saying you're wrong and I'm right. He goes there to have a discussion, and the Siddhs are actually quite open to it. Based on the language used in the Bani, they seem quite inquisitive and curious about what Guru Nanak Sahib is saying and where he comes from and who he is. So yes.
Sorry, is this in the Guru Granth?
This is in Guru Granth Sahib, pages 938 to 946. And so the first pauri starts with the Mangalacharan in the Mool Mantra, Ram Kalima La Pehla, Sidh Gosht, Ek Oankar, Sadguru Prasad. And the translation given here of the first pauri is as the Siddhs formed an assembly, sitting in their yogic postures, as depicted here, they saluted the congregation of Sanghs. And then Nanak says, salutations to the True One, who is infinite and beyond reach. I remove my head as an offering and surrender my body and mind. Nanak says, truth is attained by meeting the Sanghs, and glory is experienced in Sahaj. So right off the bat, Guru Nanak Sahib is setting the stage that he comes with humility. First of all, he says, I'm removing my head as an offering and surrender my body and mind to Waheguru. He's saying out of total humility, accepting hukum, Waheguru's hukum. He's saying, this is the manner in which I have come. And so, following the first pauri, we come to the Rahal line. And that is, would anyone like to read this? Yes, read the Korah.
I can read it, but I just had a question.
Yeah.
Is that context meeting the saints? In that context, who is the saints referring to?
So the Sant in this context would be anyone who is speaking the truth. Okay, he's not necessarily referring to the Siddhs who are sitting in front of him. Since you raised your hand, why don't you go ahead and read this? Okay, so again, this is the Rahal line, so this is going to be the central theme of the entire Bani. This is the only Rahal line that comes in the Bani. So kya paviya, why wander around as Siddhs did, right? So he's saying, why wander? Purification is attained through truth. Such, so such has a sahari on it. So through such, with such, sucha hoy, one becomes purified. So through truth, purification is attained. Sach Shabad bin Mukat na koy. So Sach Shabad bin, without the true Shabad, Mukat na koy, no one can achieve liberation. So keep this in mind as we go through the rest of the Bani. And then Guru Nanak Sahib goes on to say, I came and will depart according to the hukam, and I, Nanak, will forever live according to the hukam. The posture of the supporter is stable. This is the teaching I received from the Guru. So it actually says quite a bit in here. Again, he's saying that I am coming and living according to the hukam of Waheguru. That I'm not coming from my own mat. This is not my own thinking that I come with to present you with. This is the hukam of Waheguru. He also says he speaks the language of the Nath Siddhs. He was actually very educated. He knew who the Nath Siddhs were. He knew exactly what they were about, what kind of practices they did. So he had educated himself on who they were before he went and encountered them. And he says, he uses their terminology of postures. That was big in yoga practices, is big in yoga practices. The posture of the supporter is stable. And he's saying, Waheguru's posture, the posture of Nam, is completely stable and unbreakable. So, kind of giving preemptively, he's saying that the yoga of Waheguru, the true yoga of Waheguru, is completely true and stable. And then he says, this is the teaching I received from the Guru. So he's talking about how he received this teaching. This isn't, again, it's not his own thinking that he's saying, not his own mutt. So the Siddhs ask Guru Nanak Sahib, they say, what is the practice of the enlightened one? And by the way, I'm not going to be necessarily going 40 to 40 throughout the body. I am picking out certain things from the body to make certain points. It's a very, very in-depth scripture. It would take a long time to go through everything, so I'm picking out certain things. And the questions that were posed and then Guru Nanak's answer, they're not always just in the same order. So what is the practice of a Siddh, a true Siddh? And another way to say that would be, what is true yoga? And so the yogis, the Siddhs, they actually begin by describing what they do as yogis. And they say, away from stores and highways, we abide in the woods, among the plants and trees. Our food is fruit and roots. To live thus is the wisdom spoken of by the wise ones. We bathe at sacred pools and attain fruits of peace so that our minds are free from filth. Gorak's disciple, Laharipa, is also one of the attained Siddhs of the past. He was not a contemporary of Guru Nanak. Gorak's disciple, Laharipa, says this is the way of yoga. So they're describing themselves as being apart from society, living very simply, attending, going on tirthas or going to places that are considered sacred and washing the filth from their mind. And they're saying that this is how we've kept the peace in our mind. This is how we've removed the filth from our mind. And Guru Nanak Sahib's response to this is actually that removing yourself from society does not give you peace of mind. It does not allow your egos to die. And he goes on to say that only through Nam can you kill the ego and find peace within your mind. Only through Nam can your hunger be satisfied. And he goes on to say that it's the Guru who has shown him the way to deal with truth in society. So this idea of trading in truth or dealing in truth is done in society, and the Guru has shown the way to do that. Guru Nanak Sahib goes on to say, let the Shabad deep within you be your earrings and become distant from the ego and attachment. Discard lust, anger, and egoism and learn from the Guru's Shabad. Let your patched cloak and begging bag be the pervasive one. Nanak says the one carries you across the world ocean. True is the great one and true is the Nam. You shall realize this by studying the Guru's word. So here he's describing the actual appearance of the Siddhs, saying that they wore earrings. They wore these very large earrings that they would pierce through the middle of their ear, the cartilage, not through the lobe. It had a specific intent of doing that. The reason for doing that was that it helped to focus their energies. They believed that certain points in the body were energy points, that concentration could be focused by doing certain things. This was one of the things they did. They wore these very large earrings that would help focus their concentration and energy so that they could achieve higher spiritual states. The meditation mat that Guru Sahib later describes in the body, it's a straw mat that the yogi would sit on when doing their bhakti or in their simran. And it was believed that that mat would help channel their energies to a higher state and allow them to achieve higher energy states. The loincloth, I mentioned that they were celibate, right? They didn't marry. The loincloth was considered that it protected their purity and the power. Actually, by retaining their seed, they believed that they were retaining power within themselves to do that. That was a very actually profound belief that they had. In a begging bag that they used when they would beg for food or money was that which provided sustenance to them. And so Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, well, let your earrings be the Shabad. Let your identity be merged with the Shabad. And let the Shabad be the thing upon which you focus your attention. Same thing with the meditation mat. Guru Sahib says you don't need external things upon which to sit or utilize in order to achieve that concentration. Let the body that's been given to you be the medium through which you focus that attention. And Guru Sahib says, you think the loincloth protects your purity and power. Let the loincloth that you say, let that be your mind, which is engrossed in Nam. That will protect your purity. In the begging bag, Guru Sahib says, if you want sustenance, Waheguru's Nam is the ultimate sustenance, and that should be your begging bag. It's Waheguru's Nam. So that was how Guru Sahib sort of defines the appearance of the yoga, or what the things should represent to a true yogi. So he goes on to say, what is true yoga? And these are taken from various lines throughout the body. Guru Sahib describes true yoga as when one enshrines truth within themselves, when one destroys their ego. True yoga cannot be attained without Nam, and Nam is obtained from the true Guru. Then only is one truly practicing yoga, and the one who is without shabad does not control the breath and does not preserve the semen. So he's saying these practices that you practice on a regular basis, that you believe, brings you closer to mukti, salvation, liberation. He says these things don't do it without the shabad. The Gurmukh is a yogi who has realized what yoga really is. And he goes on to say, listen, renunciates, this is the essence of my words teaching. Without Nam, there can be no yoga. Those immersed in Nam are in a state of bliss night and day. With Nam, they find peace. Everything is revealed and understood through Nam. Without Nam, people wear many robes and stray from the path. So wearing the robes does not keep you on the straight path. Nam is attained from the Guru, and that's the way yoga is attained. Without Nam, there is no mukti. So if we kind of establish a paradigm here, you can't really see it very well, but yoga is spelled very lightly in the background of this. In there, it's kind of in light green. But if we assume that this is the realm of yoga, so this is what yoga is, okay? We're going to add to this as we go on. So there's a guru, right? The Siddhs believed in a guru-disciple relationship. Guru Nanak Sahib also believes in a guru-disciple relationship. They have that in common. So you have to have a guru in order to practice yoga, according to the Nath tradition. And the guru is what takes you to achieve mukti. Okay, it's through the guru that you would achieve mukti, or liberation. And by liberation, that can mean a lot of things. Often it's used in the context of liberation from the cycle of birth and death, of coming and going from this world. And that can only happen through destruction of ego and acceptance of hukum. So this is what Guru Sahib is saying now. That with a guru, with a true guru, you destroy your ego, you accept hukum, and through that, there's an end to suffering, and you enshrine truth within, and this is what Nam is. Nam is performed, enacted, enshrined when you enshrine truth within and you end your suffering. And this is a positive feedback loop. I don't mean to say that this doesn't feed on this and this doesn't feed on this. You see double arrows, so everything feeds off of each other in this case, but it's done through the Guru. And lastly, Guru Sahib is saying that the yoga practices that you have normally been doing, that you believe in, renunciation from the world, the breath control, the postures, the celibacy, all of that, Guru Sahib is saying that without Nam, that is not true yoga. You don't come within this realm of what true yoga actually is. Guru Sahib says, one is a yogi if the shabad is realized and the inner lotus blossoms. If one destroys the ego, everything is understood. And by realizing the inner self, one has compassion for all. Nanak says, one is praised if one sees oneself in all. So I want you to just think about that for a moment. Just reflect upon that for a moment. One is praised if one sees oneself in all beings. So seeing yourself in all beings, one is praised. And now I'm going to ask for my volunteers that were predetermined, volunteers 1 and 2, if you would come up here. So we're going to just kind of set them up here to read some of these translations. Again, I mentioned that the body is written as a dialogue between the Sidhs and Guru Nanak, right? So we have Guru Nanak Sahib over here. He's not acting like Guru Nanak Sahib, he's just reading the translation of Guru Nanak Sahib's response, okay? And then we have Sidh Gosht representing the thinking of the Sidhs on this side over here. So they'll be reading those parts. But before we get to that, the Sidhs ask Guru Nanak Sahib, how does the Gurmukh experience devotional love? And I want to mention here too that when the Sidhs ask Guru Nanak, they say, why have you become an udasi? Why have you left your worldly life, your family, to do this, to travel and have this kind of discourse? And one of his responses to that question was, I have come in search of Gurmukhs, because it's only through the Gurmukh that others will be saved. So I think that's a very powerful line. And with that in context, we're kind of moving into who is a Gurmukh and how do they achieve this or experience this devotional love. So we'll go ahead and have a reading here.
Where did we come from? Where are we going? Where will we merge? Whoever knows the answers to these questions is detached and is Guru. How can one discover the essence of the ineffable? How does the Gurmat experience devotional love? It is consciousness and it is the Creator. Oh Nanak, tell us your wisdom.
Through hukam we come, go, and merge. Through the perfect Guru, truth is learned, and through the Shabad, one state and measure are understood. A Gurmukh lives in fear of the truth. Through Bani, the Gurmukh refined to the unrefined. A Gurmukh sings the praises of the pure one. A Gurmukh attains the sacred high state. Every hair on a Gurmukh's body meditates on the pervasive one. Nanak says, the Gurmukh merges with truth. Depth allows the Gurmukh to discuss the Vedas. Depth enables the Gurmukh to be carried across the world ocean. Depth is attained when the Gurmukh has knowledge of Shabad. Depth also allows the Gurmukh to discover the inner secret. The Gurmukh attains the unseen and infinite. Nanak says, the Gurmukh enters the door of liberation. The Gurmukh speaks about the unspoken wisdom. The Gurmukh practices righteousness in the household. The Gurmukh meditates deeply with love. The Gurmukh realizes the Shabad and practices the righteous lifestyle. The mystery of Shabad is understood, and the Gurmukh inspires others to understand. Nanak says, by burning the ego, one merges with the infinite Lord. The earth was created by truth for the Gurmukhs. This is the play of creation and destruction. One is immersed in love by enshrining the Shabad. Immersed in truth, one goes home with honor. Without Shabad, one does not attain honor. Nanak says, without Nam, how can one attain truth? The Gurmukh attains the 8 occult powers and universal wisdom. The Gurmukh crosses the world ocean and attains true understanding. The Gurmukh can discriminate between truth and falsehood. The Gurmukh recognizes worldliness and renunciation. The Gurmukh crosses over the world ocean and carries others across as well. Nanak says, the Gurmukh is liberated through Shabad.
Oh man, how did the world come into existence? How does suffering end?
The Gurmukh, who reflects upon the Shabad, is rare. The true Bani is revealed to the Gurmukh. The mind of the Gurmukh is immersed in love, but rare are those who understand this. The Gurmukh dwells deep inside the home. The Gurmukh is a yogi who has realized yoga. Nanak says, only the Gurmukh knows the one. When the Gurmukh conquers the mind, the ego is destroyed. The Gurmukh enshrines truth within the heart. The Gurmukh conquers the world. and destroys the messenger of death. The Gurmukh does not lose in the court of the infinite Lord. The Gurmukh is united with the infinite Lord, and only he or she knows this. Nanak says, the Gurmukh understands Shabad.
Okay, thank you. So, Guru Nanak Sahib describes a lot about what a Gurmukh is, who a Gurmukh is, and what happens to the Gurmukh. So I just want to recap some of that. One line in particular really sticks out, that the earth was created by the truth for the Gurmukhs. Kind of an interesting line. And when we put that together with Guru Nanak Sahib went on Udasis to seek out Gurmukhs, you can see the kind of importance and honor that Guru Sahib is giving to Gurmukhs here. He's giving them the utmost importance here. And I want to mention that we often use the term Gurmukh quite lightly. We say, oh yeah, Bara Gurmukh Banda, right? So, what Guru Sahib describes as a Gurmukh, though, is quite specific and quite a high honor. And if we recap some of that, the Gurmukh is one who reflects upon the true Shabad and is rare. That's a rare person who actually does that. Sings the praises of the Pure One, sings the praises of the truth, reflects upon the true Shabad and understands the Shabad, inspires others to understand the Shabad, right? Very important. This thing that a Gurmukh has the ability or power to really inspire others. Burns the ego with the Shabad, meditates on the pervasive one, meditates deeply with love. The mind is absorbed in truth, mind is immersed in love. A Gurmukh's mind is rid of hate and envy. Enshrines the truth within the heart, lives in fear of the truth. The Gurmukh dwells deep within their home. The Gurmukh can distinguish between truth and falsehood. The Gurmukh practices truth in action. And we'll get back to that in a little bit, but important words. The Gurmukh practices truth in action. The things they do are true. Understands the Hindu scriptures, knows the secrets within the hearts of all, is aware of the mysteries of the world, conquers the world and destroys the messenger of death, recognizes worldliness and what worldliness is and what true renunciation really is. Skipping down a little, practices a righteous lifestyle, performs good deeds, and again, inspires others to do the same. Right? This idea that Gurmukh is very inspirational to others. Gurmukh keeps no count of deeds, meaning who did what to me and what somebody owes me and I deserve this. Sees the unseen. Only the Gurmukh knows the one, and a Gurmukh is the yogi who realizes yoga. So, once again, talking about who is a true yogi and what is true yoga there. Yes?
Two questions. One, you say as he starts, he surrenders himself because of so much humility to the Gurmukhs. Did the Gurmukhs also do that?
So Guru Sahib did not call the Sidhs Gurmukhs. He's not referring to
the Sidhs.
The question was, Guru Sahib, when he starts the Bani, is doing it with a lot of humility, that I sacrifice my head, my mind, and my body. And the question was, did the Gurmukhs also do that? So I was just saying, I want to make sure you're clear here that Guru Sahib is not saying that the Sidhs or the yogis that he was encountering are Gurmukhs. He's just describing who a Gurmukh is. And yes, the Gurmukh would do that, because a Gurmukh would have no ego and would live completely within Waheguru's home.
And the second question, how does the Gurmukh destroy the messenger of death?
So the idea of liberation or immortality in this body as well as other bodies throughout Guru Granth Sahib is that by achieving Jivan Mukti, which is when you become one with God, you break yourself of this cycle of birth and death. Okay, on a spiritual level, on a physical level, you're basically merged with Waheguru, and that's what they call immortality. Not the idea that you'll never die. So when they say destroys the messenger of death, it's this idea that you cease to come and go in this world. And so, if we go back to our... So then Guru Sahib describes what happens to a Gurmukh. The Gurmukh, to answer your question, is not subject to entering and leaving this world. Guru Nanak says this. And so that's the idea of killing the messenger of death. Is not bound by Maya, is immersed in praises, attains powers that the yogis believed in, is never defeated, conquers the mind and the ego, does not suffer. So this is an end to suffering that Guru Sahib is talking about. This is what happens when one becomes a Gurmukh. You don't suffer anymore. They concentrate naturally. They undergo a natural process of meditation. Just skipping around a little, merges with the truth, attains the unseen and infinite, realizes the master. Essentially, they are united with Waheguru. And then lastly, only the Gurmukh knows the one. The Gurmukh enters the door of mukti, so liberation. And the Gurmukh is liberated through the Shabad. So if we go back to our paradigm of yoga here, and we add the Gurmukh. So the Gurmukh is the one who is going to move, who moves towards the Guru. The Gurmukh is completely faced towards the Guru, right? They're not facing anywhere else. The things they do are always in the context of the Guru. What is Gurmat? And so always moving in this direction through the Guru, including all of this. So I want you to take a couple of minutes here, just 2 minutes. Yes, you have a question first?
Yeah, can you elaborate on Shabad?
We'll talk a little bit about that, and you'll probably get more of that as the sessions go through, but we will talk about that in a little bit. Yes?
Could you explain the Gurmat thing, the last one again? It's a little, I got a little confused.
Here?
Yeah.
So the idea here is that in order for somebody to be practicing true yoga according to Guru Nanak and Sidh Gosht and achieving the state of Nam, they have to move through the Guru to do that. So, okay? The Gurmukh is always going to be moving in this direction, towards the Guru, right?
And the Guru was looking for Gurmukh to do that?
The Guru says that he was looking for Gurmukhs who would spread the Shabad.
Okay.
That's basically other people. Guru Nanak Sahib himself was a Gurmukh, right?
Okay.
All the Gurus were Gurmukhs, and they were looking for other like-minded people. So this idea of the Gurmukh practices truth in action, I think another way to say that is that the Gurmukh, the Gurmukh manifests the Guru in everything that they do. Whatever they may do, the Guru is coming through them and doing it. It's not their own mat, their own way of thinking. It's only the Guru's way of thinking for a true Gurmukh in everything they do. So I want you all to take out a piece of paper, or you can write it in your phone or write it down, but write it down, please. Keeping the qualities of a Gurmukh in mind, think of one way in which you will manifest the Guru in your life over the next 4 weeks. So something over the next month, keeping these qualities of Gurmukh in mind. What can you do in your own personal life to manifest the Guru on a regular basis? So I want you to just take 2 minutes to write that down. And in the meantime, can I have my other 2 volunteers? Yeah. Go ahead and come up here. Yes?
So if I practice yoga, is that what you mean by the last one?
No, so the true yoga is what Guru Nanak Sahib has been saying, one who enshrines the Shabad in their heart, one who remembers Waheguru. That's real yoga. Guru Sahib is saying that yogic practices are not true yoga. That's not achieving the goal that the Siddhs thought it would achieve. So my answer would be, I can't say that it's not going to be a practice. It depends on what's going on inside when you're doing that yoga. Yes?
I was going to ask about the 8 powers on the slide before.
It's irrelevant. It's a belief system that they had, that yogis had. I'm sorry?
Why does it say you'll attain it?
metaphor.
It's metaphorical to basically saying the hukum this morning. Do you remember the hukum this morning? Anybody? Guru Sahib is using the belief systems of the people that he's talking to, and he says these powers and beliefs, they chase after you. You don't chase after them. When you're someone who's engrossed in Nam, engrossed in Shabad, when you're a Gurmat, these things become irrelevant, and they chase after you. So Guru Sahib is just giving high importance to a Gurmat. He's not saying necessarily that you'll actually be able to perform this power and perform that power. But he's basically saying that these things come automatically into a Gurmukh. Gurmukh is not impressed by these things. Gurmukh does not even chase after these things, doesn't want these things. Okay, so I hope you've all written down what your goals will be for the next 4 weeks. Adopting a quality of a Gurmukh. This is an active process, so I just want to make that point. It's a very active process. You do it willingly, with volition and with determination. You move towards the Guru willingly. Okay, so the Sidhs go on to ask then, who is your Guru and whose disciple are you? And so we'll go ahead and have another reading here.
You hear me?
Yep.
What is the root of all existence? What are the teachings of this present era? Who is your Guru? Whose disciple are you? What is that sermon by which you remain detached? O child Nanak, listen to what we have to say. Give us the answers to our questions. How can Shabad carry us across the world ocean?
From the life breath, Pran was the beginning. This is the era of the Guru's teachings. The Shabad is the Guru, and the awareness of its sound is the disciple. By speaking the unspoken, I remain detached. Nanak says, era after era, the caregiver has been my Guru. I contemplate only the words of the one Shabad. Thus, the Gurmukh extinguishes the fire of ego.
Where does the Shabad reside that will carry us across? What supports the breath that extends the distance of 3 and 7 fingers? How can one be stable while speaking and playing to realize the ineffable? Listen, Holy Nanak, how do you instruct the mind?
The Gurmukh is connected to truth through the Shabad, and with love, one is united with the infinite Lord. One becomes wise perceptively, and through perfect destiny is united with the infinite Lord. The Shabad is deep within the hearts of all beings, and wherever one looks, the infinite Lord is seen. And air is pervasive, so is the infinite Lord pervasive. As air is pervasive, so is the infinite Lord pervasive in Sun. The infinite Lord is without attributes, Nirgun, and with attributes, Sargun as well. With grace, Shabad abides deep within the heart, and doubt is removed. The body and mind become pure, and the pure Bani and Nam are enshrined within the heart. Shabad is the Guru that will carry one across. Realize that there is one here and hereafter. The infinite Lord has no color, no form, and is not an illusion, Maya. Nanak says, the Shabad shall reveal this.
Air is said to be the life of the mind, but what does air feed on? What is the hand posture of wisdom? What is the practice of the enlightened?
Without the Shabad, the essence is not attained, nor does the thirst of the ego depart. Immersed in Shabad, one discovers Amrit and remains immersed in truth.
What knowledge can hold the mind steady? What type of food is satisfying?
Nanak says, when one feels pain and pleasure as alike, through the true Guru's grace, one does not taste death. If one is not immersed in love, does not taste the essence, and is without the Guru's Shabad, one is consumed by the fire of desire. Such a one does not preserve the semen and does not chant the Shabad. The breath is not controlled and truth is not contemplated. But the one who speaks the unspoken with wisdom remains balanced. Nanak says, such a one attains the supreme soul. By the Guru's grace, one is immersed in love, drinks the nectar Amrit and merges in truth. By contemplating the Guru, the fire of desire is extinguished. By drinking the Amrit, the soul dwells in peace. By contemplating the truth, the Gurmukh crosses over the world ocean. Nanak says, after deep contemplation, this is understood.
Where does the mind that wanders like an elephant reside? Where does the breath live? Where does Shabad reside? How can the wandering mind be still?
With grace, one meets the Guru, and the mind dwells in the home within. When one eliminates the ego, one becomes pure, and the mind is stilled.
How can the root of all existence be recognized, in which the soul can be realized? How can the sun of wisdom enter the home of the womb that is the mind?
When the Gurmukh eliminates the ego, Nanak says, the sun of wisdom naturally enters the home of the moon, that is the mind. When the mind becomes steady and stable, it abides in the heart, and the Gurmukh realizes the root of all existence. When the breath is seated in the home of the navel, the Gurmukh discovers the essence of the soul. Shabad resides in the home within the heart, and through Shabad, the light of the three worlds is seen. Hunger for the truth eliminates suffering, and satisfaction is attained through the true one. The Gurmukh is aware of the unstruck sound of Ban, and rare are those who understand this. Nanak says, the one who speaks the truth is immersed in the never-failing color of truth.
Thank you. So, perhaps one of the most famous lines from Sidh Gosht that they read the translation of is when the Siddhs ask, who is your Guru and whose disciple are you? Because remember, they believed in this Guru-disciple relationship, so they wanted to know who that is. Does anyone know that line that comes in Sidh Gosht? I'm sure many of you have heard it, maybe not knowing it came from Sidh Gosht.
तेरा कवन गुरु जिसका तुम चेला शब्द गुरु सब समझे.
Tera Govind Guru Jiska Tum Chela. So, who is your Guru? Whose disciple are you? And Guru Nanak Sahib replies, Shabad Guru Surta Tum Chela. Right? So, Guru Nanak says the Shabad is the Guru, and the awareness of its sound is the disciple. That's whose disciple I am. The sound of the Shabad is the disciple that I am. Guru Nanak Sahib also says the Shabad is deep within the hearts of all beings, and wherever one looks, the infinite Lord is seen. Shabad is the Guru that will carry one across. So here we get into this idea of Shabad being the Guru. And Guru Sahib very clearly states that it's the Shabad that is the Guru. Was there a question?
Yeah, the phrase speaking the unspoken comes up a lot. Can you explain that?
I have to go back and look at the context, but in general, what that means is an understanding that comes from within, the nam that comes from within. It can't be described in words. And this comes again in Gurbani.
So it's more about practicing the truth. It's like referring to practicing?
I think it's referring to an understanding that comes.
Thank you. That's going to actually come up a little bit when I do the Gurbani translation, but the term you're referring to is agat kahani or agat katha, either one of those. And what it actually is referring to is Vaheguru. That Vaheguru is unspoken and unseen, so the only way to experience or hear is through Shabad.
So Guru Sahib says, well, a lot of what they mentioned was a lot of how the Guru helps an individual. So these are all practical lessons that we should be able to take away from this. So what are some of the things that how does the Guru help us as individuals? Guru Sahib says that our impurities are erased and one becomes virtuous through the Guru. Unwise thoughts are erased. The individual is imbued with Vaheguru's wisdom, finds the door of liberation, remains balanced. The fire of desire is extinguished in an individual through the Guru. One attains Nam, discovers Amrit and is immersed in truth, is immersed in love, is carried across this world ocean, removed from coming and going, this idea of birth and death within this world. Supreme peace of mukti is attained, of liberation. The person is united with the infinite Lord through the Guru, through the Shabad Guru, and attains the supreme soul. The soul dwells in peace, and that's an end to the suffering. So these are the things that happen through the Shabad Guru. Okay? So Guru Sahib is very clear about who the Guru is. It's the Shabad. Sorry. And Guru Sahib also says that without the Shabad Guru, yoga is not attained. So again, talking about this idea of what is true yoga, it's not what he was seeing the Sidhs do, it's something else. It's done through the Shabad Guru, through Nam. Does not preserve the semen, so he's talking about their actual practices, physical practices of being celibate, the other things like controlling the breath, the postures, things like that, the things they wore outside. And he's basically saying that the purpose of those things is not achieved by doing them, it's that purpose is achieved through the Shabad Guru. The breath is not controlled and truth is not contemplated. Nam is not attained. No one attains mukti. All become attached to duality of the world. One wanders about, coming and going. One's aspirations bear no fruit. The mind spills over in every direction. It is not controlled without the Shabad Guru. One is never satisfied and feeds on poison. He actually uses pretty harsh words and goes on to say one is bitten by a poisonous snake of Maya. So some very vivid analogies of what happens to a person who does not have the Shabad Guru. The manmukh is burnt away. The essence is not attained, nor does the thirst of ego depart. One is consumed by the fire of desire. One is enveloped in the darkness of ego. One suffers in pain. And lastly, one loses the opportunity of the human life, which is to achieve liberation. That's not only the opportunity of human life in Gurbani, but it's the responsibility of human life. So that is our individual responsibilities in this world is to achieve mukti, to achieve liberation, move towards the Guru, and ultimately unite with Vaheguru. That is the purpose of our life. So when we look at our paradigm of what true yoga is, now we add in, it's not only just a Guru, it's not any Guru, it's the Shabad Guru that does all this for us. So Gurmukh is one who is engrossed in the Shabad, and that's the Guru. I want to move on to briefly talk about grace. Guru Nanak Sahib says, in Sidh Gosht, with grace Shabad abides deep within the heart and doubt is removed. Nanak says, when one feels pain and pleasure as alike, through the Guru's grace, one does not taste death. Again, the idea of death doesn't come near the person who has achieved the Guru's grace. By the Guru's grace, one is immersed in love and drinks the nectar of Amrit and merges in truth. And with grace, one meets the Guru and the mind dwells in the home within. So I think an apt analogy here is, if you're going to go visit somebody at their home, so you make a plan in your mind, you know what you're going to do, you know what you want to do, you have to get ready, you have to find some way to get there, you walk, you bike, you drive a car, you have to know where you're going, so beforehand you figured out the directions, where you want to go, what time you want to be there. You get in your car and you go there, and you go and you knock on the door. If nobody opens that door for you, though, you can't achieve that goal that you were trying to achieve, right? So this is what grace is. This is where the Guru opens that door so that you can meet the Guru. That doesn't happen without Guru's grace. And that's very clearly written in Sidh Gosht by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So this idea that you have to have the Guru's grace in order to actually meet the Guru doesn't mean that you don't do anything, right? You had to plan, you had to get ready, you had to get in your car and then go knock on the person's door who you wanted to meet. You had to make that uttam, that effort to do all that. And if the Guru decides to open the door, you can meet the Guru. And so none of this is achievable without grace, but it is our responsibility to try to adopt qualities of the Gurmukh, right? The Gurmukh is given such high honor by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So our goal is to try to adopt those qualities of the Gurmukh and hopefully achieve grace so that we can move forward. So in summary, Guru Nanak Sahib in Sidh Gosht is saying that renunciation of society is not necessary or even useful in achieving liberation, that one should be engrossed in the Shabad and Nam while attending to worldly responsibilities, that true yoga is performed by a Gurmukh who submits him or herself to the Guru, contemplates the Shabad, and accepts Waheguru's hukum. That's what true yoga really is. And that unity with Waheguru is only attainable through the Shabad Guru, which in turn is attained through Guru's grace. So just to review the Rahal line again, Kya pagya sach sucha hoye, sach shabad bin mukt na koye Rahal. Why wander? Purification is attained through truth, and without the true Shabad, no one attains liberation. So again, that's the central idea of Sidh Gosht, and everything else surrounds these two lines. So just to conclude, well, what happened after Guru Nanak Sahib spoke with the Siddhs? Nobody actually knows. There are some hints as to what may or may not have happened, but especially at Mount Kailash, it is said in our Janam Sakhis that the Siddhs asked Guru Nanak to join them. They were so impressed by his answers, they realized that he was someone who had attained some level of spirituality, that they asked him to join them. Whether or not they truly understood his message, nobody knows. There are stories, other Sakhis, not in Mount Kailash, but in other encounters with Siddhs, where they actually became Guru Nanak's followers. There was an area called Gurmat, and that became Nanak Mata later on, because everyone actually became Sikhs after that, the Siddhs did. And then Bhai Gurdas Ji writes, the Siddhs exhausted themselves with the Tantra mantras, but the Shabad did not allow their powers to come up. The Guru is the giver, and no one can gauge his bounties. Ultimately, the humbled yogis submitted before the true Guru Nanak. This is in reference to the encounter at Achal Batala with those Siddhs. But ultimately, there was some realization that Guru Nanak Sahib was speaking a truth, and they went on from there. So, just to recap a little bit, I just want to make the point that the body is written in a very particular context in association or encounters with the Siddhs, but I think you can see that all the lessons that are found in Sidh Gosht can be applied to us today in our everyday lives. It's not, the messages are not about the Siddhs and yogis, right? It's about us. So we need to take these messages home with us and implement them into our lives. And Guruji shows us how, through body, through Sidh Gosht, how to transform ourselves and achieve our potential, and the rest is up to us to try to move in that direction with grace. Are there any questions? Yes?
Can you elaborate on Shabad?
So Shabad, are you asking, can you be more specific as to what you're saying? Elaborate, it's pretty broad.
Is Shabad limited to anything in the Guru Granth Sahib, or sometimes in the slides it said Shabad is in the heart, or there's other ways it's been described, so.
So I think, are you guys going to talk a lot more about that in the Guru workshops?
Yeah, we're going to get into it, but I think it's worth addressing to some degree.
Well, I think ultimately, if you want to add on to this, Shabad does refer to the Guru. The Guru is given to us through the body, okay? So Shabad is the body, but it's the knowledge contained within the body. That comes from within. So that's not necessarily just something written on a piece of paper. It's not contained within the form. The Shabad is also formless. It comes from Waheguru. We understand it through form, and then we contemplate on it, on something that's in essence formless. So if you want the Shabad, you do the things that the Guru has told you to do. Shabad is sometimes used interchangeably with Nam, and that's a very difficult concept to try to define. It's used in a lot of different contexts. Throughout Gurbani, it refers to Waheguru. It sometimes refers to the process of getting to Waheguru. And it's sometimes used interchangeably with Shabad. Do you want to add on to that?
Like literally the word Shabad means word. Okay, it does mean words. That's a literal thing. You know, like Paul was saying, doesn't just mean words written on paper. There's something deeper. But there's Shabad. Bin Shabad, how are you going to get across without the Shabad? So what is the Shabad there? We have Shabad Guru Surthon here. The Shabad is the Guru. So nodding the person wasn't the Guru. It was the Shabad that was inside of him that was the Guru. That same Shabad is in the Granth Sahib now for us. So for a Sikh, the Shabad is the Gurbani. But it has other forms, like you were saying about Nam. So we can't contain it. It's not even smart for us to try to define it too much and contain it when Guru Sahib is telling us that these things are undefinable and immeasurable instead of unmeasurable. But the idea of Shabad as the Guru, I think for a Sikh, we have to keep that in mind, that Shabad wasn't Guru Nanak, it wasn't the Gurus after him, and it's in Guru Granth Sahib now. So if we need to understand anything or learn anything, we should go talk to our Guru. We should go read the Shabad that's there and try to understand it, at the minimum.
And I think just to make the point, the Shabad, even the Shabads that we read, we physically sing Kirtan and read Bhad, that also came from within, from a place within that cannot be named, really. So, you know, and we think of it as Turki Bani. Guru Sahib did not make up these words. They were delivered to him. These concepts were delivered through the Guru, the physical form of the Guru, to the rest of us. So I think, yeah, I agree with what Mathuriji was saying about all that. That it's not to even try to, yeah, it's weird that I call it Mathuriji. But to even try to measure that, it would be useless. It's futile to even try to measure that and define it. Yes, question back there.
What's the fastest way to read, understand, and comprehend the teachings of the Shabad and then apply them in daily and busy lives?
So the question was, what is the fastest way to read and understand and comprehend the Gurbani? That might be a different discussion altogether, but it requires effort on your part, on my part. Everyone needs to make their own effort to be able to read and understand. It's not going to come without effort. It's not going to be that you wake up someday and you're just going to be able to read Gurbani. And if you don't hear or read or listen to Gurbani, you won't be able to understand it and you won't be able to comprehend it. So the first step would be you have to make a physical effort to do that.
Yeah, and Gurbani actually says that too. Urdum karo, make an effort. Karabo tako. God will get it done for you. So, or in Bhagavad Gita, that Shabbat Tradition with 800 dollars. So basically, you take one step towards the Guru, then we'll take 1,000 steps towards. But Urdum karo, karabo tako. Clearly says, make an effort, and God will get it done for you.
Sunil Corey had a question, and then we're bossing.
just had two questions. The first one was, is this the only dialogue in the Guru Granth Sahib written like this, in a conversational type of form?
I personally don't know of other dialogue written like this, but I don't know if Kuldeep Uncle, do you know of any other Bani which is written in this kind of dialogue format?
This is the only Bani that is in dialogue form. There are questions, many places, many places, and the Guru Sahib tries to give answers. Just like "Kis chara hoye, ki kure kutte pa," and the answer is "Hukum rajai charna likha." That was the first question of Guru Granth Sahib. So Guru Sahib from time to time mentions about it, but there is no full composition, just like Sidh Gosht as it is. That is complete conversation with Siddhas, and Guru Sahib replies to the questions that are raised. One more thing I just wanted to focus on it. People were asking about the Shabad. When Guru was asked, because the Shabad came from the mouth of the Guru, so it's the message. The Guru was emphasizing, elaborating, and re-emphasizing that don't worship my body. Worship the words that come out from my mouth, because they are revealed. They are coming from my Guru directly. In one of the writings in history, it says, "Jo mam saath chahe kar baat." If anybody wants to talk to me or discuss with me, Granth ji padhe sune vichare saath. Beautiful words. Should recite Guru Granth Sahib and listen to what it says, padhe sune vichare, and then think about it, understand it, and put that understanding into practice. So, jo mam bachan sunan ki chai. If anybody has longing to listen to me, listen to my words, Granth ji padhe sune umai, with lot of enthusiasm to read Guru Granth Sahib and understand. So the Shabad is itself in Guru Granth Sahib. Bani Guru, Guru hai Bani, which Bani Amar Sahib. So जैसी में आवे कसम की बाणी तैसरा करे करी ज्ञान मिला. Whatever the Bani comes or revealed from Vaheguru, that's what I express in the words that came directly from Vaheguru. So these are some things.
Just to add to what Uncle is saying, there's also two lines that come, "Pothi Parmeshwar ka than, sadh samgave gun govind puran brahm gyan." Same thing. Pothi is referring to before the Guru Granth Sahib was compiled, the Shabad contained within the Pothi, right? And Guru Sahib is giving that the importance of Parmeshwar. Ruben Boston?
Sunit, go ahead, 2 questions.
Go ahead, Ruben Boston.
I really like this question here of what is the best way to learn the Shabad, and I know the end, and yes, it is the effort. I know for me, the individual effort is daunting, and I think that's where the Sangat comes into play, at least for me, for us. I know when I sit down with a Shabad, I can maybe understand and reflect on 50, 60, 70% sometimes. But then when I'm with others who have their own perceptions on it and experiences, that's when I personally get that full 100%. And so I'd say, for me, who's sort of learning my way through Gurbani right now, being within the Sangha, and we'll have experiences like this in the Gurbani Vichar workshops, and you'll see how powerful it is and how much you can learn by just sitting with a group of like-minded people. That would be my suggestion as far as how we start. The other comment I want to make, as I was reading some of the responses that Gusa made, and also the sound Ankuji made, that as the Sakhi goes with Pailana, who later became Guru Amrit Pasha, early on when he was a devout follower of, I believe it was had met Guru Nanak Sahib and in an encounter, unexpectedly, and he didn't know who he was. And so he was face to face with Guru Nanak. But that did not actually pull him away from Guru. He continued on with his path. It wasn't until later that he heard this shabad, that he was connected. So I mean, that Sakhi itself just really helps me understand this whole idea of shabad. That it was not the physical present, it was that shabad that made it.
Any other questions?
Can I was going to expand just for a second on the question of what's the easiest way? Why do we ask what's the easiest way? You want to be a professional MMA fighter? You're going to ask your coach what's the easiest and quickest way for me to become a champion? Or does he tell you go to work? You know, when we don't have something as a priority, we look for the easiest way. If you want to make it a priority, you won't be afraid to put in the work and put in the effort. So instead of thinking about what's the quickest way, what's the easiest way for you to learn, start to figure out when's the opportunity that I can go to work.
Just to give an example, I just wrote down, I don't need a mic, I just wrote down like all the things I have to do, and then these are all the things I'm doing in life. So like, I'm president of an association at school, I'm working part-time, training for a marathon, 18 hours a week of class, full-time studying. I have all these things, and I'm feeling that my life is going well, but then why should I make this a priority? I'm asking the blunt question, right? Like, I don't feel any deficiencies in life at the moment where I stand, and I guess how can you encourage me to add this to my life as a priority?
I think part of it is you have to want to. I mean, Guru Sahib is clear about what the goal in our life is. That's to become one with Waheguru. We should accept Hukum, destroy our egos, and become one with Waheguru. Guru Sahib is very clear about that being our goal, our responsibility. Whether or not you want that as a priority is a different thing. So I think part of it has to be that you have to want that as well. If you want an end to suffering, because we go up and down, right? Right now your life's going good. You think it's great. Sooner or later you're gonna go down from that. You're gonna keep going up and down. That's the cycle we're in. Sometimes it's not until we're in that bottom part that we realize what we really want is to be out of that. But I think ultimately, for me at least, in my understanding, is going to be that you really have to want that in order to move towards it. If you think, and I'm not saying it's not important, it might be important to you, but if you think running a marathon is more important than taking steps towards your guru because you can't make time for that, but you can make time for this, then that's your prioritizing, and you have the right to do that, but you're also got to realize that you'll stay within this cycle of suffering and happiness.
I guess like the current stereotype that's going on right now is that when most people are at a low point in life, then they turn to this, and then they add this as a priority. Is there any like stories or examples of people who are at a high point in life who are extremely busy as well, and then they add it as a priority?
Actually, that's
already
my
they're pretty clear.
So we'll hold on to that for a while. There was a question.
Coming back. Go ahead.
Okay, so like it's not an exact answer like what you really want right now, that a famous person like who got into this, but naam simran jitna gal kiti hai na shabad angata naam yeah. So for some people, like artists, for example, or I'll take an artist as an example. Like, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਸਿਮਰਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ their art, singers who like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, we listen to him, right? He goes crazy when he's singing. That's his naam simran. You run, right? So when you're training, that's your naam simran. So it's not that finding two different things in your life and pack them in your schedule. It's doing what you do and doing it so truthfully and so honestly that is your naam simran. Does that make sense? Right? You find your truth in what you love. Whether it's reading, whether it's running, whether it's singing, making music, that's your truth. and then everything else falls into place. It's not that achieving a certain like checklist and then it's everything all together. And I'm not saying that I practice this because it's hard. Saying and doing is hard, but that's how I understand it, if that makes sense.
I think what you're getting at is this idea that it doesn't matter, it's not as important what you do, what's important is how you do it. And so Guru Sahib does say, Utdeyan, Bendeyan, Sukdeyan, Sada Sada Dharna, So, I think what Benji is getting at is that everything you do, if you're engrossed in Nam, if everything you do is with Nam involved in it, it doesn't matter what you do. You don't necessarily have to say that because I'm running a marathon or studying for a class, that I'm not engrossed in Nam, that I'm not attached to the Shabad. Ultimately, but it's going to take work to get there. It's not like like Benji was saying, it's not like you're going to get there on fast track. Just say, I can do this and then I can get there. It's going to take work to get there. But ultimately, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And that's with Nam. Everything that's done with Nam, enshrined in the Shabad, is ultimately that's how you live. You begin to live through that rather than living through other things. Yes, Vijay.
Just like Guru said, I think it's in this Bani. When Sidh asked Guru Sahib, show me the power, and Guru Sahib said that I do not have any such powers that you want me to show, then they said, which powers your faith is standing. Then Guru Sahib said, it's Bani and Sangat. These are the two pillars on which my faith is standing. I think that's the Bani and Sangat which finally institutionalized as Guru Granth and Guru Panth. So with Shabad, you need the Sangat to practice Shabad into your life. So these are the two things that Guru Nanak Dev Ji in Sidh Bani emphasized.
I think if I can also just say, Bhavani, your question is so open and honest, but I love it because I think we all ask ourselves the same question often, that how life is good, life is fine, so what is the point? And we are all doing that because we all are making choices in our lives that maybe are not facing the Guru all the time. All of us do. And I think I know I myself perceive myself as very happy in everything that I'm doing, or life is wonderful, but I think there are points in, I know, I'm sure everyone thinks or whatnot, but what is that real happiness? I feel good right now, but what is that real happiness? But I love the question because I think it pushes us all to ask ourselves that same question, because you are being very honest about your life and letting us all know that these are the questions in your lives, but I think we all have that very same question, and hopefully in the course of the retreat we can find those answers with each other about what is it that really makes us happy and where do we get that happiness from. But I just think it's very brave to ask that question in this kind of Sangat then.
Real quick, Puneet Singh, and then Riddhi Kaur, and that'll be it.
I just wanted to answer your question directly because Sangeeta Penji mentioned this to me just 2 days ago. You wanted real life examples. Guru Amar Das Ji was we know he was the oldest, but he was 60 when he first heard the Shabad from Devi Ambrosi. And he was at a good point in his life. He's the richest guru in all of it. He was rich, his daughter is married, and even Guru Angad Dev Ji, he was also a spiritual person. So these are people who were in their high points in their life. Guru Angad Dev Ji, Pairana Ji, was a devoted worshipper of Durga, and to him he felt happy, he was religious. So even then when he heard Shabad, so these, we do feel happy, like Sangeeta when you're saying, but when we are in Sangat or when we hear something that's different but it's it's correct or it's true, like Shabad, then we realize that there's something more, and that's when we put our focus into that work, or like we really feel it and we put it into whatever we are doing, like running a marathon or not, and we can relate those or use that as analogies to what Guru Sahib is saying.
I just wanted to add, I don't even know, there's so many points everyone made that were what I was going to add to. I want to also add to what Sangeeta Benji said, that I think that's a really good thing that Pawan Singh brought up, that why, sort of what's the point, and then Benji brought up that we'll make running your Simran, and I think that kind of answers the question, but at the same time he's sort of saying, but I'm happy just running. I see the importance of Uddam, but I would like to say it's not always, like Uddam is not always your choice. I would say in a way, like I was personally on a mental level for the last few years, like intellectually arguing always with everything Sikhi, but in my heart, besides Kirpa, it was like I was falling in love with Sikhi, and that to me, that was total Kirpa. That was not my Uddam. I think the Uddam on my part was what we're all doing here. We came to this retreat, and that in itself is a big step, because Guru Sahib's planting the seeds, just being in the Sangha, hearing everything about Sidh Gosht. But honestly, in my life, I would say the Uddam was actually given by Guru Sahib for me to have that Uddam was also Kirpa. Like to even say, have Uddam, it's like you have to get Kirpa to do the Uddam, otherwise it doesn't come from within. Somebody who wants to make an effort, I would say that in itself is with Guru's grace.
Real quick, and then we have to end. Okay. All right, we're going to end it here. Kuldip Uncle is going to say a few words, I think. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Just a few words. Thanks very much, Mohanpal Singh, for an excellent presentation on the subject. It was very long and
that was short for Paul.
It was not boring. It was excellent, because the way he has elaborated things, they are beyond my expectations. Very nice, very, very good. And thanks very much for the presentation. One thing, just wanted to mention to you, many things that come to our mind are beyond our comprehension. We cannot really visualize what the Guru is trying to say. So, first thing one should do is to make sure how to select the Guru. And Guru Granth Sahib, there is a very big elaboration on that subject, that who is the true Guru and how to select the Guru. And once you select the Guru, then the questioning stops, because you listen to the Guru. So, since all of us are Sikhs of the Guru, and that means we have faith in our Guru, Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, and then after that, the Shabad is the Guru, Guru Granth Sahib. So whatever is written in Guru Granth Sahib, you should have faith in. And then, listen to what the Guru is saying, what the Shabad is saying. And many things we cannot follow because we do not understand whether they are to be prioritized or not. Then the next thing one should do is to do ardas. Ardas has a lot of power. In Rehrasta, every day we sing that shabad, we recite that shabad. Mere meet ko Moko Ram Har ke jan Sadgur Satpurna Bino Karo Purvas Ham Kire Kiram Sadgur Sarvani Kar Daya Naam Prakash. That Naam da Prakash is very important. The light of Naam. And in the light of Naam, you should do everything. Naam is nothing but light, but power. And through light, we can see things as they do. And once you see things correctly, then you try to go on the righteous path. In Japji Sahib, Guru Sahib gives example. Pariye hath pair tan de. Very simple example that Maharaj Sanjam when you dirt yourself, when you fill yourself with filth, pani kote utraski, you use water to wash it away. Pariya mat papa ke sang, o tope name ke. And when you fill your mind with filth of vices, only way to wash it is through the soap of Nam. And that Guru Sahib, very simple example, not almost this is how the power of Nam works. And Nam is nothing but wine. And Shabad is nothing but Gurmat. Recite Shabad and try to understand Shabad, even a little bit. And it's not very easy to understand Shabad. I have been reciting for so many years, Nitne, but it took me a while to understand some of the Nitne. Not all of it. I still don't know all the Nitne. So don't get disheartened if you don't understand. Keep doing it every day. Sometimes some words, some lines will strike you and you'll change your mind. And that's what it's doing. So these are some of the words after this beautiful lecture. I just wanted to share. Thanks very much. Bye.